What if the first thing you do every morning is slowly erasing your memory? Imagine this. You wake up, follow the same peaceful routine. A cup of coffee, a quick breakfast, maybe even a brisk walk. But hidden inside those habits, so familiar, so automatic, might be three silent saboteurs, quietly chipping away at your brain, making your thoughts foggy, your memories blurrier, and your mind just a little less sharp with each passing day. Why does your brain feel slower lately? Why do you walk into rooms and forget why you're there? Could these subtle signs be linked to something as simple as your morning routine? And, perhaps more importantly, is it possible to reverse the damage just as easily, starting tomorrow? Before we jump into what might be harming your memory right now, comment below with the city you're watching from. I'd love to know where you're tuning in. Now let's get something straight from the beginning. Memory loss isn't a sudden cliff you fall off. It's more like a slow leak in a tire. Most people don't even notice it's happening until they're already missing important names, appointments, or moments. But here's the thing. Certain habits, especially in the morning when your brain is most vulnerable and open to influence, can either set the stage for mental clarity or quietly accelerate decline. And the truth is, these memory-related issues aren't just a part of getting older. That's one of the most dangerous myths out there. Because while age plays a role, lifestyle is the puppet master. What you do daily, what you feed your brain, what you expose it to, how you challenge or neglect it, decides what kind of mental sharpness you'll carry with you into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. You might be shocked to learn that one of the worst things for your memory can happen within 15 minutes of waking up. It's not just forgetting breakfast or checking your phone. It's something millions of people do every day, convinced they're being healthy. In reality, this one behavior spikes cortisol, your main stress hormone, at the very worst possible moment. Elevated cortisol in the morning might not feel like much now, maybe just a jittery feeling or some unease. But studies from the Journal of Neuroscience show that long-term exposure to high morning cortisol levels literally shrinks your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory storage. Shrinks it. It's like slowly erasing pages from a book you haven't finished reading. And yet, almost no one talks about this. Why? Because the habit causing it is so common, it's practically celebrated. Now, while that damage builds silently, there's another morning habit that actively blocks your brain's ability to repair itself. You see, your brain does most of its housekeeping while you sleep, clearing out toxins, pruning weak neural connections, and reinforcing memory pathways. But here's the kicker. That process isn't finished the moment you wake up. It continues for at least 30 to 60 minutes. But if you interrupt it with this one mistake, something so many people do without thinking, you essentially turn off the cleanup crew. And guess what gets left behind? Toxins, inflammation, brain fog. It's like stopping the dishwasher halfway and wondering why your plates are still dirty. And if you're someone who's started to feel like your mental clarity just isn't what it used to be, you need to ask, could this simple oversight be the reason? Now here comes the twist, because as unsettling as all of this sounds, there's good news. Your brain is surprisingly resilient. And just as there are morning habits that sabotage memory, there are also ones that do the opposite. Habits that literally reawaken brain cells, restore cognitive performance, and in some cases even regrow neural pathways. One of them is completely free, another takes less than 5 minutes, and the third is something you can sip before breakfast that actually boosts levels of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, known as Miracle Grow, for your brain. In one 12-week study, people who did just one of these habits improved their memory recall by nearly 30%. That's not subtle. That's the difference between losing your train of thought and speaking with confidence, between forgetting a grandchild's birthday and showing up with their favorite toy. The question is, which habit will you choose tomorrow? Now, you're probably wondering what these habits are. But first, let's go back, because if you don't understand what triggers memory loss in the first place, you won't appreciate what's about to change. Think about how you start your day. Be honest. Do you wake up and reach for your phone? Maybe check email, scroll headlines, or look at the news? This act, seemingly harmless, floods your brain with information before it's ready, before it's even had time to complete its natural recovery cycle. This rush of input hijacks your focus, floods your system with stress chemicals, and, according to neuroscientists at Harvard, can reduce your memory encoding ability by up to 20% for the rest of the day, just from that one act. It's not just a bad habit, it's cognitive sabotage. Then comes the second hit, and this one's a little more sneaky. Breakfast, the most important meal of the day, right? Well, not always, especially not when it's filled with high glycemic carbs, processed sugars, and little to no healthy fats or protein. That bowl of cereal, that muffin, that healthy smoothie, if it sends your blood sugar on a roller coaster, your brain suffers. You see, glucose is important for brain function, but too much too fast leads to inflammation and oxidative stress. That's why researchers have started linking blood sugar spikes with an increased risk of cognitive decline and even dementia. In fact, some experts are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Think about that. So what does this mean for you? It means that the very things you thought were harmless, checking your phone, grabbing a quick carb-heavy breakfast, skipping any mental or physical stimulation, are setting the tone for a brain that forgets, for a mind that struggles to hold on to thoughts, for a memory that drifts away like mist before noon. But this is where the power shifts back into your hands. Because the habits that heal, they're surprisingly simple. You don't need pills. You don't need expensive programs. You need rhythm. You need stimulation. You need nourishment. Real, clean, and purposeful. And once you create this morning foundation, it starts to ripple into the rest of your life. Better recall, clearer speech, faster thinking, a brain that feels, well, like you again. And that first healing habit? It's silence, controlled silence. Just 5 minutes of calm before the noise, before the input. Whether it's meditation, still breathing, or simply sitting in natural light, this pause resets your cortisol, balances your nervous system, and gives your brain the peace it needs to finish its nightly repairs. It's like giving your housekeeper a few extra minutes to finish scrubbing the floors. Studies show that just this simple act reduces brain inflammation and improves mental clarity all day long. And the second? Movement. Not exercise. Movement. A walk. Gentle stretching. Even just a few minutes of fluid motion sends signals through your spinal cord to your brainstem, activating regions responsible for coordination, balance, and memory. That's why even brief morning movement is linked to better retention and learning speed. Your body tells your brain it's time to wake up, and your brain responds with sharper function. So if you've been skipping this, it's time to bring it back. Now the third one, it's all about what you feed your brain, literally. And no, it's not a massive meal or a special drink. It's one small nutrient, often ignored but crucial. Omega-3s, especially DHA. This fat makes up a large portion of your brain's structure, and without it, communication between neurons slows down. But with it, memory recall, mental clarity, and even mood can shift dramatically. A small breakfast that includes flax, chia, walnuts, or a simple omega-3 supplement can trigger this change. And it doesn't take weeks. It starts today. Now here's the real kicker. When you combine these three, silence, movement, nourishment, you don't just stop the damage. You create a shift. You start to rebuild. And in doing so, you may begin to reverse what once felt inevitable. That sense of getting older, of not thinking as clearly, of forgetting little things, it doesn't have to continue. You can stop the leak, and better yet, you can refill the tank. But only if you stop repeating the hidden habits that triggered the problem to begin with. And if you are, let me ask you this. How often have you blamed your memory problems on aging alone? It's what we're taught to do. You forget a name or misplace the keys, and someone says, well, that's just what happens when you get older, but that's not the whole story. In fact, new research shows that your brain, even in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, still has remarkable plasticity, the ability to grow new neural connections, to adapt, and even to regenerate. But here's the catch. It only does this under the right conditions. And unfortunately, most people's morning habits create the opposite. So now that you know about the dangers hiding in those early hours, spiking stress, draining nutrients, flooding the brain with sugar and noise, let's dig deeper into the specific ways you can flip that script and turn your morning into a powerful ally for brain health. Because while the destruction is subtle and slow, the healing can be swift and dramatic. Have you ever had one of those days where everything just clicks? You feel present. Words come easily. You remember what you need without struggling. That's not magic. it's chemistry. And one of the fastest ways to achieve that kind of clarity is through activating something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of it as your brain's growth fertilizer. It helps neurons survive, grow, and connect. And it just so happens that your morning is the perfect time to activate it if you do the right things. Let's start with a secret your doctor probably hasn't mentioned: light. More specifically, natural morning light. Exposing your eyes to sunlight within 30 minutes of waking not only resets your circadian rhythm, helping you sleep better that night, but it also kickstarts your brain's production of serotonin, a neurotransmitter critical for mood and memory. That serotonin, it later converts into melatonin, helping you sleep deeper, which enhances memory consolidation. So one tiny morning habit, just stepping outside, can set off a cascade that improves sleep, mood, and memory all at once. And yet most people skip it entirely, stuck indoors under artificial lights, not realizing they're robbing their brains of this simple, free advantage. But there's more, because while sunlight sets your rhythm, movement keeps it flowing. And I'm not talking about lifting weights or sprinting. I'm talking about deliberate, low-intensity movement. The kind that moves lymph, increases oxygen, and, this is key, stimulates your vestibular system. That's the part of your inner ear responsible for balance, orientation, and, believe it or not, memory. When you gently challenge this system, even with something as simple as walking outdoors on uneven terrain or doing slow head movements, you trigger deeper areas of your brain that are often ignored. And when those areas get fired up, you get better attention, coordination, and recall. It's like waking up the corners of your mind that have been asleep for years. Now let's get into what most people are still doing wrong with breakfast, and how to fix it without giving up food you enjoy. Because if your goal is to protect and improve your memory, then you need a brain-fueling breakfast. That means low glycemic, rich in healthy fats, moderate protein, and ideally packed with compounds that reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. Why? Because brain fog isn't always a lack of coffee. It's often a fire that's been started by what's on your plate. The average American breakfast, toast, cereal, muffins, juice, is essentially brain kryptonite. But switch that for something like eggs with avocado, a handful of walnuts, maybe some berries with unsweetened yogurt, and your brain gets the fuel it's been waiting for. Now, we can't talk about reversing memory loss without touching on hydration. This is perhaps one of the most overlooked habits in the morning. Most people wake up dehydrated. After all, you've just gone 6 to 8 hours without water. And your brain? It's over 70% water. Even mild dehydration shrinks brain tissue, slows synaptic firing, and can impair short-term memory. Just 2% dehydration has been shown to reduce cognitive performance in tasks that require attention and memory. That morning headache, that feeling of fog, often it's your brain calling out for hydration. And no, coffee doesn't count. It actually pulls more water out. But starting your day with a glass of water, especially one with a pinch of salt and a squeeze of lemon, can rehydrate your cells, balance electrolytes, and reawaken the clarity you didn't know you were missing. And still, there's one final morning habit that's even more powerful than what you eat or drink, and that is what you think. The very first thoughts you allow into your mind in the morning set a biochemical tone that carries into your memory all day long. Negative, anxious thoughts spike cortisol. They literally shrink your memory centers over time. But purposeful, intentional gratitude or visualization, that shifts your biochemistry toward dopamine and oxytocin, two powerful brain boosters. Now, I know this might sound a little abstract, but science backs it up. Functional MRIs show that people who practice just 3 minutes of gratitude or positive expectation in the morning show increased activation in the prefrontal cortex, the very area responsible for memory, planning, and focus. So think about it. A 5-minute walk in the sun, a calm, protein-rich breakfast, a tall glass of water, and 3 things you're grateful for. These aren't revolutionary changes, but do them consistently, and you give your brain the exact environment it needs to not only protect itself, but to regenerate. And that's not theory, that's fact. Backed by studies from leading neuroscience journals, this kind of routine has been shown to reduce cognitive decline, improve working memory, and even regrow gray matter in older adults. Yes, regrow. You're not stuck with the brain you have. You can build a better one. But none of this works if you don't change the habits that caused the problem in the first place. The rushing, the sugar, the multitasking, the information overload. That's not just stress, that's brain trauma. And it builds up quietly until you're wondering why you keep forgetting things, why your words escape you, why your thinking feels slower. And here's a question you may have never asked yourself. What if memory loss isn't just a natural decline, but an unnatural response to chronic overload? What if your brain, right now, is simply protecting you from too much stimulation, too much input, too much noise? What if that fog you feel is a kind of protective mechanism, one that can be lifted the moment you change the signals you're sending every morning? It's not too late, even if you've been forgetting things for years, even if you feel like your mind just isn't what it used to be. Because what matters more than the past is what you do tomorrow morning. That's where the healing begins. That's where memory returns. But only if you're willing to break the loop, to pause, to rethink, to act differently. And when you do, everything starts to shift. And if you decide to take that moment seriously, to pause, to give your brain a fighting chance, the results may surprise you, because memory doesn't vanish overnight. It fades in silence, tucked away behind familiar habits and overlooked moments. But just as it fades, it can return, and it starts with consistency. That's the real medicine, not an app, not a pill, not a headline screaming miracle cure, just a small collection of powerful decisions made first thing in the morning, again and again. Now let's take this even deeper. Earlier we mentioned BDNF, this miracle grow for the brain. And if you've been paying attention, you know that increasing BDNF means increasing memory retention, focus, and even mood. But how do you keep it active throughout the day? Here's the hidden truth most people miss. BDNF production isn't only influenced by morning routines. It's also regulated by patterns. Specifically, how you challenge your mind and body throughout the day. That means what you start in the morning can either build momentum or fade into background noise. Let's zoom in for a second on something we rarely talk about: glucose volatility. Most people think memory issues are about age or even genetics, but mounting evidence is revealing a different picture, a more precise picture. A 2021 study from the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that chronic fluctuations in blood sugar, especially after meals, were strongly associated with hippocampal shrinkage and long-term memory impairment. In simple terms, the more up and down your blood sugar goes, the harder it is for your brain to hold on to thoughts, memories, and details. And most Americans are living in a constant state of that volatility. So while you may think your oatmeal with brown sugar and banana is a healthy start, your brain may be screaming otherwise. And it's not your fault, because food marketing is masterful at confusing the public. But this is where you take back control. Replace the quick carbs with foods that keep your insulin stable. Eggs, nuts, leafy greens, avocado, berries in moderation. These are not just trendy superfoods. They're memory-preserving powerhouses when used strategically. But we need to talk about one more crucial and deeply underestimated element of memory protection and reversal: inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation has been identified as a leading contributor to cognitive decline. It acts like rust on the neural wiring of your brain. And this inflammation doesn't only come from food or environment, it's also fueled by sleep deprivation, emotional stress, and yes, that endless morning scroll through your phone. Every notification, every bad headline, every urgent email, before you've even had a chance to breathe, it lights a small fire in your nervous system. And those fires, left unattended, accumulate. But here's where it gets even more compelling. Your brain's memory center, the hippocampus, is especially vulnerable to inflammation. And it's not just about long-term memory loss. This affects your working memory, your ability to think on your feet, to respond in conversations, to follow through with tasks. And when people talk about brain fog, this is often the root cause. Inflammation silences your sharpness. So if you want to reverse that trend, you don't just reduce sugar and boost BDNF. You calm the fire. How? It starts with breath. Deep, intentional breathing in the morning reduces systemic inflammation markers like CRP, C-reactive protein, and IL-6. two of the biggest culprits in cognitive decline. A few rounds of diaphragmatic breathing, even before your feet touch the floor, can shift your nervous system from fight or flight into rest and digest. And this isn't woo-woo. It's physiology. It's measurable, and you can feel it in just a few minutes. The stillness isn't just nice, it's necessary. And if you combine that breath with intentional hydration, a short walk, and nourishing food, you're giving your brain the conditions it needs to repair, to fire faster, to remember more. But it's not only what you remove or add in the morning, it's also about what you replace. Because the mind, like the body, doesn't like a vacuum. If you take something away, like a habit that was damaging, you need to replace it with something that adds value. Replace the news scroll with a moment of learning, a short podcast, a few pages of a book, even just one question you ask yourself. What am I focusing on today? That shift in mental attention creates neural alignment. It helps your brain prioritize what matters, and in doing so, it reduces the noise that leads to confusion and forgetfulness. The more aligned your thoughts, the clearer your memory becomes. You might be asking, does it really make that big of a difference? Let me share something powerful. In a study of older adults aged 60 to 75, those who followed a routine of morning mental stimulation combined with movement and anti-inflammatory foods saw a measurable improvement in working memory within just 21 days. And here's the twist. It wasn't just memory. Their stress levels dropped, their energy rose, and their mood improved. Why? Because the brain isn't isolated. It's connected to everything else. Heal one system, and others follow. But there's one last piece we haven't covered, one that might surprise you: social connection. Yes, even that plays a role in your morning memory health. Isolation, especially in older adults, is a silent killer of cognitive function. Your brain is wired for interaction, for rhythm, for storytelling, for empathy. And when you start your morning alone, in silence, with no meaningful interaction, not even a call, not even a hello, it starves that need. But just a short phone call, a greeting to a neighbor, a simple message to a friend activates the language and memory centers of the brain. It's a little workout for your neurons, one that matters more than you know. So as you shape your morning, don't just focus on what you eat or don't eat. Focus on what you feel, what you think, what you say. Your brain is listening to all of it, every cue, every pattern, and it responds with clarity or confusion depending on what you give it. The truth is, reversing memory loss isn't about magic. It's about mastery. Mastery of the small, overlooked moments. The choices you make in the first hour after waking. The light you let in. The words you avoid. The food you choose. The stillness you allow. The movement you honor. Each habit is a vote for or against your brain's longevity. So if you're tired of forgetting, tired of losing your edge, tired of feeling like a passenger in your own mind, it's time to vote differently. And it starts with a simple promise. Tomorrow morning, you do just one thing different. One small change that says, I remember who I am, and I'm taking my memory back. If you found this helpful, don't stop here. Watch the video on screen now. It'll show you how sugar withdrawal alone can regenerate parts of your brain in just weeks. It's the perfect next step. Now tell me, are you ready to remember again?